haven't sent this message just for you. I haven't sent this message before, not because it wasn't ready, but because I wasn't. Some words need time to mature, some truths need silence before they earn a voice, and some feelings like this one live quietly inside the chest, knocking only when the world finally goes still. This message was never meant for crowds. It doesn't belong on timelines, walls, or places where people skim instead of feel. It was meant for one pair of eyes. Yours? It was meant to be read slowly, maybe late at night, when the noise fades and the heart becomes honest again. I don't know where you are when you read this. I don't know if you're tired, healing, smiling, or pretending to be strong. But I know this. If you're here, reading these words, then something invisible has already connected us. Not coincidence, not accident, recognition. There are things we never say out loud because saying them would change everything, so we carry them quietly. We learn how to function with them tucked behind our ribs, next to the heart, where they beat softly with every breath. This is one of those things. I want you to know, first of all, that this message is not here to demand anything from you. It doesn't ask for promises, explanations, or replies. It exists simply to be felt, to sit with you, to remind you of something you may have forgotten about yourself. You are not invisible. I know the world has made you feel that way at times, like your presence is optional, like your effort goes unnoticed, like your silence is easier for others than your truth. But invisibility is not your fate, it's only a phase imposed by people who never learned how to truly see. I see you. Not in the dramatic way people claim to see others, but in the quiet, unsettling way that notices the cracks, the pauses. The way you go quiet when something matters too much. The way you give more than you receive and still apologize for wanting rest. You don't talk about it much, do you? The heaviness, the feeling that you're always one step behind happiness. No matter how fast you run, you smile well, you function well, you survive well. But surviving is not the same as living, and some days, that difference aches. If I could sit across from you right now, I wouldn't rush to fill the silence. I'd let it exist. I'd let you breathe. Because some people don't need advice, they need permission to exhale. This message is that permission. You don't have to be strong here. You don't have to explain your wounds or justify your softness. You don't have to impress anyone. You can simply be. Do you know how rare that is? The world teaches us to perform, to package pain into productivity, to turn heartbreak into motivation, quotes, and exhaustion into ambition. But it never teaches us how to sit with ourselves without judgment. It never teaches us how to rest without guilt. If no one has told you this lately, let me be the one. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to feel deeply without apologizing for it. There is nothing wrong with the way your heart works. I think that's what I admire most about you, even if you don't see it as admirable. You feel things fully. When you care, you care. When you hurt, you don't half hurt. You experience life in high definition, in colors that overwhelm people who only live in black and white. And yes, that makes you vulnerable. But it also makes you real. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that being sensitive was a weakness, that feeling deeply was dangerous, that loving fully meant losing control. So you learned to guard yourself, to lock parts of your heart away, to act unbothered when you were anything but. This message isn't here to tear down your walls violently. It's here to knock gently, to let you decide whether to open the door or not. I don't need access to all of you. I just want you to remember that the door exists. There are nights you replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much or not enough. You think about alternate versions of yourself, the braver one, the quieter one, the one who left earlier, the one who stayed longer. You carry ghosts of choices you never made and outcomes you never got to see. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you thoughtful. And thoughtful people often suffer in a world that rewards loudness over depth. Still, despite everything, you keep going. You wake up, you show up, you do what needs to be done. You love in the ways you know how. And even when you feel empty, you still find a way to give. That's not accidental. That's character. I don't know who taught you resilience, but I know it cost you something. Strength is never free. It's paid for with sleepless nights, swallowed words, and tears shed in private spaces where no one can see you break. This message sees that. If you're still here, then something in part one stayed with you. Maybe it stirred a feeling you couldn't name. Maybe it felt uncomfortably accurate. Or maybe it simply felt quiet, like sitting beside someone who understands without asking too many questions. That's how this message continues, not louder, not faster, but deeper. There are things about you that don't show on the surface. People think they know you because they know your routine, your tone, your habits, but they don't know the internal negotiations you make every day. They don't know how often you choose peace over confrontation, silence over explanation, distance over drama. They don't know how heavy that choice can feel. You've learned to carry emotional weight with dignity. You don't collapse in public. You don't bleed where people can step on it. You clean up your pain, tuck it away, and show up anyway. And because of that, people assume you're fine. That's the dangerous part about being strong. No one asks if you're okay when you look like you can handle anything. No one checks in on the ones who never complain. The world rewards endurance but forgets to nurture the enduring. And yet here you are, still kind, still thoughtful, still capable of softness. That softness is not a liability, it's a quiet power. You don't rush into connections, you observe first, you listen, you feel the energy of people before you let them close. And when you do let someone in, it's never shallow, it's never careless, it's intentional. That's why loss hits you harder. When people leave, or change, or disappoint you, it's not just about them, it's about the trust you invested, the space you made, the version of yourself you allowed to exist around them. You don't grieve people, you grieve the future you imagined with them. And you do it alone. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being emotionally self-sufficient. You're surrounded by people, yet rarely met. You give advice others lean on, but you don't know who to lean on when your own voice feels tired. Sometimes you wish someone would notice without you having to explain. Someone would read between your sentences. Someone would stay curious about your silence instead of assuming it means you're okay. This message is doing that. Staying curious. I know there are days when you question your own worth, not dramatically, not loudly, but quietly, in the background of your thoughts. You wonder if you're too much or not enough, if your timing is always off, if your presence really makes a difference. Those thoughts don't define you. They're symptoms of a heart that cares in a world that often doesn't respond with the same intensity. You were never meant to be ordinary. That doesn't mean you're meant for grand gestures or dramatic destinies. It means your depth requires environments and people who know how to meet it. Not everyone can. Not everyone will. And that's okay. Some connections are lessons, not homes. Some people come to show you what you won't tolerate again. Some experiences exist only to refine your boundaries, not to stay forever. You're learning that now. You're learning that you don't have to explain your standards. You don't have to beg for consistency. You don't have to shrink your needs to keep people comfortable. Love, respect, and presence should never feel like negotiations. Still, unlearning takes time. You've spent years adapting, adjusting, making yourself easier to hold. Of course it feels strange to choose yourself now. Of course it feels selfish at first. Growth always feels that way when you're used to self-abandonment. But you're not abandoning others, you're returning to yourself. And that return is sacred. There's a version of you emerging that doesn't chase, doesn't over-explain, doesn't panic when someone pulls away. This version trusts that what's meant to stay won't require constant convincing. That version of you is quieter, but stronger. I want you to know something important. You don't need to become harder to survive. You don't need to numb yourself to avoid disappointment. You don't need to close your heart to protect it. You just need to place it in safer hands, including your own. You are allowed to outgrow people who only knew an older version of you. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to want a life that feels aligned instead of merely acceptable. And no, you're not late. You haven't missed your chance. You haven't ruined your story. You haven't fallen behind some invisible timeline everyone else seems to follow. Your life is unfolding at the pace required to shape you properly. Some people bloom early and fade fast. Others take time and last longer. You are the latter. There is wisdom in you that only came from waiting, watching, enduring. One day, you'll realize how necessary every delay was. How each pause protected you from things you weren't ready for yet. Until then, patience may feel like punishment, but it's actually preparation. If you ask me why this message keeps unfolding, I wouldn't say it's because there's more to explain. It's because there's more to feel. Some truths don't arrive all at once. They come in waves, each one gentler but deeper than the last. By now, you may have noticed something shifting inside you. Not dramatically, not loudly, just a subtle awareness. Like realizing you've been holding your breath for a long time and only now remembering how to inhale fully. That's not accidental. You've lived most of your life in a state of readiness. Ready to adjust. Ready to respond. Ready to protect yourself if things go wrong. Even in calm moments, part of you stays alert, as if peace might be temporary. That's what happens when you've learned not to expect softness. Somewhere along the way, you taught yourself that disappointment hurts less if you anticipate it. That if you don't hope too much, you won't fall too far. So you became careful with joy. You rationed it. You smiled, but with restraint. You loved, but with conditions. Not because you're cold, but because you're tired of bleeding. What most people don't understand is that guarded hearts aren't closed. They're injured, and injured things move slowly, cautiously, testing the ground before trusting it again. That's you. You don't jump into belief anymore. You approach it quietly. You circle it. You ask questions in your head before you ever speak them out loud. You're not afraid of love, you're afraid of repeating pain that once convinced you it was love. And honestly, that makes sense. You've seen how quickly people change once they feel secure, how promises fade when effort becomes inconvenient, how words can sound sincere, while actions tell an entirely different story. So now you listen differently. You listen to tone, to consistency, to what's done when no one is watching. You notice who shows up when it's boring, not just when it's exciting. That's not cynicism. That's discernment. There's a quiet maturity in you that wasn't earned easily. It came from disappointment, yes, but also from reflection. You didn't just survive what hurt you. You studied it. You asked yourself hard questions. You took responsibility where it was yours and learned to release what wasn't. That's growth most people avoid. Still, even with all that wisdom, there are moments you feel strangely empty, not sad, not broken, just hollow, like something important is missing, but you can't name what it is. It's not love you're missing. It's recognition. You want to be met where you are, not tolerated, not admired from a distance, not appreciated for what you give, but understood for who you are when you're not giving anything at all. You want conversations that don't skim the surface, presence that doesn't disappear when it gets uncomfortable, a connection that doesn't require you to perform strength all the time. That desire doesn't make you needy. It makes you human. You've been the calm one for so long that chaos feels intrusive now. You crave peace, not the quiet that comes from suppression, but the quiet that comes from safety, the kind where you don't have to explain yourself, the kind where silence feels full, not awkward. That kind of peace is rare. And because it's rare, you're learning not to settle for substitutes. You're learning that intensity without consistency is chaos, that attention without effort is noise, that words without follow-through are just echoes. You no longer fall for potential alone. That's a powerful shift. There's also something else happening, whether you've named it or not. You're grieving an older version of yourself, the one who believed faster, trusted easier, loved without armor. You miss that version sometimes. But that version didn't have what you have now. Clarity. You don't want to go back. You just want to move forward without losing your softness. And that balance, strength without hardness, boundaries without bitterness, is one of the hardest things to learn. You're learning it anyway. Slowly, imperfectly, honestly. I want you to remember this. Healing doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop abandoning yourself when feelings arise. It means you sit with discomfort instead of silencing it. It means you trust yourself enough to know you'll survive whatever truth shows up. You're already doing that. Every time you choose not to chase validation, every time you walk away from confusion, every time you honor your intuition instead of doubting it, those choices are rewriting your life in quiet ways. One day, you'll look back and realize this was the season where everything changed, not because something dramatic happened, but because you did. And when the right connection arrives, whether it's a person, a purpose, or a place, it won't feel like anxiety. It won't feel like guessing. It won't feel like proving your worth. It will feel like relief, like recognition. There is a strange calm that arrives when you finally stop fighting yourself. It doesn't come with fireworks or announcements. It doesn't demand attention. It simply settles in, quietly, like a truth you've always known but were never ready to accept. This calm is not happiness, not yet. It's something deeper, something steadier. It's acceptance. You've spent years negotiating with life, bargaining with your own heart, telling yourself, just a little more patience, just a little more compromise, just hold on a bit longer. And for a long time, that survival strategy worked. It kept you moving. It kept you functional. It kept you from falling apart when everything inside you wanted to collapse. But survival has an expiration date. At some point, the soul demands more than endurance. It demands truth. That's where you are now. You no longer want to simply get through life. You want to feel it, fully, honestly, without shrinking, without pretending, without constantly editing yourself to fit spaces that were never designed for you. This realization didn't come easily. It came after disappointment stacked on disappointment. After giving people the benefit of the doubt until there was nothing left to give. After trusting words that were never backed by presence. After staying longer than you should have because you believed loyalty meant self-sacrifice. You learned the hard way that loyalty without reciprocity is self-betrayal. And that lesson changed you. Now, you pause before offering access. You observe before investing emotion. You no longer rush to prove your worth or explain your intentions. You let people reveal themselves at their own pace, and you believe what they show you, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. This doesn't mean you've become cold. In fact, the truth is the opposite. Your heart is still soft, but it's no longer careless. It no longer opens itself to anyone who knocks. It listens first. It watches. It asks, is this safe? Is this consistent? Is this real? That kind of discernment doesn't come from fear. It comes from wisdom earned through pain. You've realized something else too, something subtle, but powerful. Not everyone deserves the same version of you. Not everyone gets your vulnerability. Not everyone earns your emotional labor. And not everyone who wants closeness is capable of handling it responsibly. You used to feel guilty about this. You worried that having boundaries made you difficult. That choosing yourself made you selfish. That protecting your energy meant you were becoming distant or unkind. But guilt is often the echo of old conditioning. You were taught that love means endurance, that patience means tolerating neglect, that understanding means silencing your needs, that being good means being convenient. You're unlearning all of that now. And unlearning is painful. Because when you stop overgiving, some people don't step up, they step away. When you stop explaining yourself, some people feel entitled to your silence. When you stop rescuing, some people reveal how dependent they were on your self-abandonment. That realization stings, but it also clarifies. You're beginning to see that the people who truly care don't punish you for having boundaries. They respect them. They don't feel threatened by your growth. They don't demand access as proof of love. They meet you where you are without making you feel guilty for changing. These people may be few, but they are real, and you're finally choosing quality over quantity. There was a time when being alone felt like failure to you, like proof that you weren't chosen, like evidence that something about you was lacking. You measured your worth by proximity, by who stayed, who called, who showed interest. Now, solitude feels different. Now, being alone feels like clarity. It feels like waking up without emotional debt, like breathing without anticipating disappointment, like existing without having to manage someone else's expectations. You're discovering that peace is addictive. Once you taste it, chaos loses its appeal. You no longer feel drawn to intensity for intensity's sake. You don't mistake emotional turbulence for passion anymore. You recognize that anxiety is not chemistry, that inconsistency is not mystery, that hot and cold behavior is not depth. It's instability. And you've had enough of that. You want steadiness now. You want emotional presence. You want someone or something that doesn't make you question your worth, your place, or your safety. And until that arrives, you're willing to stand alone. That choice is revolutionary. It's also lonely sometimes. There are nights when the quiet feels too loud, when you wonder if you're being too selective, too patient, too detached, when you question whether this self-respect will actually lead somewhere, or if it's just another form of isolation dressed up as strength. Those doubts are normal. Growth always comes with uncertainty.